Depending on who you listen to, buy-to-let in the UK is either completely dead or is still somehow the easiest passive income stream going. If you're new here, I'm Johnny. I spent 10 years in investment banking, working on mortgages, commercial real estate and loans. For the last 5 years, I've been buying, renovating and growing my own property portfolio. So in this video, I'm going to break down for UK buy-to-let what's changed, what now kills a good deal, and I'll also pressure test a normal buy-to-let so you can judge whether a property still stacks up in today's market. Because I think that really is the question now. Not does buy-to-let still exist anymore, but more does the deal still work? Right now, rates are much higher than people got used to for years, and the rules are now tighter too. And it's harder to make weak deals look clever. But that does not mean that buy-to-let is broken. It just means that bad deals get found out faster, and that is a very different thing. Now, the latest numbers are a bit more mixed than the doom merchants online are making out. Rents have held up better than prices recently, and lending has not fallen off a cliff. And that matters because it tells you that this is less of a story about the market doing all the work for you and much more of a question around whether you actually bought a sensible deal in the first place. So my actual overall view is simple. Buy-to-let in 2026 still works, but weak deals don't. If you want this to work now, you need better numbers, better discipline and more margin for error. And that, weirdly, is exactly why I still like it. Because when markets get tougher, being switched on and running the numbers matters way more. So let me show you how I think about it. Right, welcome to the workshop. I'm going to keep this really simple. 4 bits. What's changed, what a deal looks like, what usually kills it, and then the verdict. So first up, what has changed? 3 things, and this is basically it. Rates are higher, rules are tighter, and margins are thinner. And that's the market in plain English. The Bank of England held rates in March, and some even noted that lenders had already pushed up pricing on new mortgage products. So if you were hoping finance was about to drift back to the old cheap money world, then it's not really happened, unfortunately. And then on the rules side, from the start of May, the first phase of the renters' rights changes kick in, including the end of Section 21 and move to rolling tenancies. So no, this is not the same game that it was a few years ago. But equally, it's not some apocalyptic world either, because luckily rents are still holding up, and that's the shape of the market now. It's not that the whole model has stopped working altogether, it's that the stuff that you can maybe get away with before is much less likely to survive now. And area in particular matters massively, because the UK is just not one market. Some places still work nicely, like the Midlands and the North, but some are tight, like the South and London. And some hold value okay, but are poor cash flow investments. So when people say that buy-to-let doesn't work anymore, my first thought is where, at what purchase price and at what rent? Because without that, that sentence doesn't really mean much. Recent ONS figures show that the North East and London are doing very different things on rents, and London house prices were down year on year, which is exactly the point that I'm trying to make here. Broad landlord takes sound nice online because they're sweeping statements, but real outcomes are much more local than that. Now let's do something much more useful. Let's pressure test a normal deal as an example. Not a unicorn, not a disaster, just a boringly normal sort of deal. Because this is where a lot of Rightmove optimism goes to die. On the surface, plenty of deals still look fine, and then you start adding the real stuff. So cracks, chimney work, roof bits, repointing, little repairs here and there. Each of those things on their own feel manageable, but if you add them together, suddenly what you have just like tips into bad deal territory very quickly. So let's say the purchase price is 160,000 and rent is £1,000 a month, which is a pretty ordinary example. Deposit would be 25% at about £40,000. Then call the buying costs another £10,000 to £12,000 for the stamp duty, about £8,000 plus solicitors' fees, plus maybe surveys. So really you're around £50,000 to £52,000 in before any refurb. So let's say the debt is roughly £120,000 because of that. And let's use probably a conservative interest rate right now of 5.5%. That, including a product fee, gets you to around £6,800 a year in interest. So call it about £560 a month. And then you add the real world stuff like maintenance, insurance, voids, compliance, maybe management as well. So you can call that maybe another £250 to £300 a month. So very roughly your picture becomes £1,000 in a month and £560 out on the mortgage and about £250 to £300 on running costs and reserves. And so what you'll be left with is about £200 a month of gross profit. Now, is that amazing? No. But is it nonsense? Also no. It's just real. And this is the bit people often don't love, because a decent deal can still work. It just doesn't work by miles anymore. You're not going to be making £500 profit a month on this immediately. But give it time with capital growth and maybe rent increases, that you could be looking at that much profit a month when the market moves in the direction you want it to move over a course of a few years. So the moment you kid yourself on the cost or the area or the spec, then the margin disappears much faster than people think. This is why so many deals still look all right in the listing when you're just browsing Rightmove, and then feel much less impressive once you actually run them properly through a spreadsheet. Now, I'm not mentioning the full picture because it's not the entire return that you'll get. Property also gives you leverage. You are controlling a bigger asset with less of your own money because it's secured by the property that you're buying. And sometimes you can buy a property below market value initially and you create a value through a refurb. Like if you compared it to the FTSE, then you can't buy a discount on the FTSE because the bathroom is horrible, but you can with property. So the profit is still there if you pick the right deal. But the key question now is not just, can I buy a buy-to-let? It's, would I still want to own this exact deal if rates stay a bit higher, the rules get tighter, and life gets more annoying? And that is a much better question. Now, let's move on to the next section. What actually kills the deal? Usually is one of these four: weak yield, no buffer, wrong area, or not respecting the rules. The first one, weak yield, is obvious. If the rent is too soft for the purchase price, then the mortgage just will eat all of your profit and you won't be left with anything. But the next one, buffer, is the big one for me because it's where life gets involved. Literally last week, I had a water tank split in my attic, and this is exactly the sort of thing I mean. You always know that there are bits that might need sorting at some point, but then one thing goes wrong and suddenly you ask whether it's smarter just to patch it and cut a corner, or whether you might as well do a bigger job and do the full upgrade and get a cleaner setup and warranty. And now you're a few £1,000s in, and that's why the buffer matters. Not because something goes wrong every week, just because when something does go wrong, and it's maybe a big one, a pretty decent deal can start feeling tight very quickly. Now the third one is area, and I found that a lot of bad investing is not actually really about the house. It's about being in a market where demand is weak, rent growth is weak, or resale demand is weak as well. But moving on to the fourth one, it's rules, because whether people like it or not, the landlord game is just getting more professional with the Renters' Rights Act. So you cannot just ask whether it works today anymore. You have to also ask what this property might need from you over the next few years as well. And not only does that include potential voids from the Renters' Rights Act, but maybe the EPC, which they're suggesting from 2030, requires at least £10,000 investment on average per property. None of that actually says that buy-to-let is dead. What it does say is that realism matters a lot more now than optimism. And that brings me to the verdict. My overall view is pretty simple. Buy-to-let still works if you have a strong deal, but weak deals, they don't work. And that's basically it. The market is not dead, and it's not easy mode either anymore. It's just more selective. And that lines up with what the sector data is saying as well. UK Finance's latest buy-to-let update showed solid yields, a still functioning lending market, and an interest cover that says lenders are still seeing deals stack up, just not in a lazy way. I'm still buying, but I'm definitely buying more carefully, and my filter is tighter too. Much less interested in talking myself into a deal than I am asking whether I would still be happy owning it if something annoying happened 6 months in. But no, I don't think buy-to-let is too late in 2026, but I do think the market is less forgiving. If you buy in the right area, with the right numbers and enough buffer, then I still think it can be a very strong long-term move. But if you buy weak deals and hope that the market rescues you like it used to, I think that this market exposes that pretty quickly. So to me, buy-to-let in 2026 is not really a story about blind confidence. It's much more about disciplined confidence and strong numbers on your spreadsheet. So if you found this video useful, please give it a like and subscribe if you want more practical UK property investing content without the usual hype or nonsense. And I'll put another useful video floating over here somewhere for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.